So these are our two amazing scientists we're going to be chatting today, and Chat with an Academy Scientist is a really cool opportunity for you guys to see what goes on behind the scenes, down in the basement as well, a lot of the cool stuff that's happening. And one of our neatest projects is this orca articulation that we're going to talk about today. But first of all, let me introduce both of you. This is Moe, who works here in ornithology and mammalogy, and then this is Lee, he is visiting as well. Moe, can you tell us what you do here at the Academy?
I'm the collection manager in the birds and mammals department, which means that I take care of all of our specimens. So we're kind of like a library, but instead of having books, I have things like skeletons and birds and eggs that I can lend to people for research. So I take care of 130,000 birds and mammal specimens.
Very cool. So what do you and the other people in your department do in the day-to-day? Like take care of the bones, make things?
Prepare specimens. Researchers come in from all over the world to look at the specimens and use them for their scientific research. Sometimes we send specimens to other folks, and sometimes we put together whole skeletons like this orca.
Yeah, has anybody seen the orca articulation? Okay, volunteer in the back. Yeah, it's in the middle room, the big glass room, and you can find them there after this today. Before we start, we should actually talk about what an orca is. Is it a whale? Is it a fish?
So an orca is a mammal. It's a marine mammal. It's the largest member of the dolphin family. So even though it's called killer whale, it's not actually a whale. The name came from orcas being able to kill whales, so they're actually whale killers. But they are members of the dolphin family. They're the largest dolphin.
You see that? Okay, and let's introduce Lee. Where are you visiting from? What were you doing when you got the call from the Academy to come help us with our bones?
I was actually putting another whale skeleton together at that very moment, I think. I'm here from Homer, Alaska, and I've been putting whale skeletons and other types of skeletons together for about the last 30 years. And more, I'm getting whales that are swimming this way from all kinds of directions, and occasionally I connect with one of them and get to put them together.
Pretty cool. And you guys might imagine his nickname is the Bone Man. So can you tell us some examples of projects you worked on, types of bones you worked with? We have some cool pictures of some old things you've done. What other animals have you done besides whales?
Yeah, whales are certainly my favorite, but I go all over the place. That turtle you're looking at there was one that washed up in Homer, Alaska. It was the farthest north a green sea turtle had ever washed up, so we put that together. But we do a lot of projects, or I started out doing a lot of projects between a small museum that we had and the local high school, and we did collaborations where we put skeletons together using the kids to do the work, and a lot of this was based around a 41-foot sperm whale, but there wasn't enough whale bones to go around for this whole school, so they started pulling things out of the freezer and wanting to put more and more skeletons together, so we ended up doing maybe 8 or 10 skeletons over this 2-year period, and that was kind of where it began for doing skeletons with volunteers.
Yeah, definitely. And you have a lot of volunteers here. We brought him in because Orca Project is huge, but can you talk about where this orca came from? Moe is part of a marine mammal stranding network. So can you tell us the story?
So we respond to any dead marine mammal between Bodega Bay and Año Nuevo in this area. So we got a call from the general public that an orca had washed up in Point Reyes in a very, very hard to get to beach. And so that was the first picture. And then these are some of the pictures that I took when I first arrived at the orca. So the first day we took measurements and photographs in case it washed out. And then after we had sent away the photographs to the orca experts, then we decided to collect the entire skeleton.
Okay, I have a question. It might be a little bit of a tangent, but I heard people were curious about this before. What did it smell like when you were working with this orca?
Whales have a very kind of sweet, oily smell. It's not a bad smell at all.
Was anybody expecting that answer? No, something different. You did mention that you were at a beach that was really hard to get to. How did you get it back here to the Academy?
So he was 18 feet long, and we had no way of getting the whole animal out at one time. So we had to cut him into very small pieces. We did do a necropsy. Every time a whale washes up, we work with the Marine Mammal Center to do a necropsy to try and figure out what was wrong. So we did a necropsy, then we cut him into smaller pieces. You can see us dragging the pieces here. And then for the skull, which we could only get down to one size, and it weighed 200 pounds, we had to use a stretcher to get it up this really steep cliff. And here's just a little video of how we got it over this intertidal area where the waves were kind of washing in our boots and everything. We made it safely. It took 4 hours to get the skull up.
Can you guys imagine that? That must have been a feat. What was so special about this particular orca that you wanted to bring it back?
So this guy is a member of the offshore ecotype, which we don't know much about. So here's a picture that I took of him on the beach. This is his dorsal fin and this is his saddle patch. And there are researchers that can actually identify them based on that. So I sent that information off to them and they sent this back. This is a picture of him 2 months before he died. And he's number 0319, so offshore number 319 that they identified. And these are the places that he was seen throughout his lifetime, mostly in 2002, 2003 in Alaska, and then again in 2007, 10, and 11, and then here in 2011 where he died.
Yeah, so a very special skeleton that we wanted to bring back. So you might be thinking we cut up the bones, brought it back here. Does anybody want to guess how you clean the bones of an orca? Toothbrush?
We did put some on the roof.
Oh yeah, you saw that on the roof? You might be able to see some whale skeletons up there. Mo, how did you guys do it?
We have a large tank that we put things in. It's a saltwater tank. So basically we take off as much muscle and tissue as we can and then just put the bones in water, and the water degrades all the soft tissue and they come out nice and clean.
And Lee, you've worked with a lot of skeletons, as we mentioned before. Have you used other ways to clean off the bones in your career?
Well, we've used every way there is, I think, to try. Getting whale bones clean is kind of the ultimate challenge for any museum. Getting the flesh off is fairly easy, but those bones are just saturated with oil. And trying to get the oil out of whale bones is the golden standard that every museum in the world is trying to figure out how to do. These guys did it really, really well here. There's a couple of bones that we don't have back yet because they still have a little bit of oil in them, but for the most part, these bones are about as good as they get.
Very cool. Can you give us an example of some other ways that you have cleaned bones in the past?
We had a museum director that had a large yard with a fence around it. We used to butcher the bones and bring them up and put them in this yard, and it was called the bone yard, and the flies and everything would work on that.
Then it doesn't smell so good.
That one does not smell so well. We've dropped them into crab pots. I'm from Alaska, so we have king crab pots, which are big enough for multiple people to crawl into. So we often would put them in crab pots and drop them in the bay and pull them up 8 months later. That was another way. And the total state of the art right now for cleaning whales is a little bit hard to believe, but it's using horse poop. And the bones are fleshed and covered up with piles of horse poop. And even in Alaska, we can go back a year later and have absolutely clean bones with all oil gone. A year later with, anyway, so that's another way that whale bones are being cleaned a lot these days.
Okay, is anybody thinking that in their head? Like, they definitely use horse poop. No. And have you ever worked with an orca before specifically?
Yeah, this is actually the third orca that I've put together. We're working on a couple others in Alaska right now that are not ready to be put together yet.
And when you are putting together these bones, how do you decide on the placement of all of them? How do you decide which one goes where?
Oh, mostly I ask the volunteers where they go. Yeah, there's somewhat of a formula for it that, once you show somebody how it goes, for the most part, people who haven't even done this before can figure out the sequence of a lot of it. It looks a lot more complicated when you're looking at a pile of bones all in one place like that, but it is sortable.
Have you ever made a mistake putting the bone in one place and then you have to take it out and put it somewhere else?
Oh, not for about an hour. We just had 2 ribs that we discovered were reversed, so we had to break break those loose out of the skeleton, reverse them, and put them back in again.
Okay, it's all a process, right? So what are the first steps when you're articulating a skeleton? What bones do you start with?
Oh, my favorite. I usually try to start with the flippers, because the flippers on this guy have, it's hard to see, but
Here we have it.
oh,
Yeah, and this is from the actual project that they are working on.
this is one of the flippers from it. You can see how many bones this thing has. So I usually like to start with the flippers. There's several reasons for that. One is that it uses up a lot of little tiny bones before they get lost, because as the project goes on, it starts getting more and more hectic, and more tools come out and materials, and this gets a lot of these little bones put in place before they can get lost. It's also kind of a preview of what the rest of the skeleton project is going to be like. So once the volunteers have gotten this put together, they pretty much understand the steps that we're going to use to put the rest of the skeleton together. It's just on a little bit different scale. So these are all wired and pinned with steel pins, and we're using the silicone material to replace the cartilage, and that's the same process that we're using on the rest of the whale. This is one of the pins that goes through the backbone of the whale. This is bent to the shape that we chose to have it. There's a lot of things that look like this that go through the whale.
And this is an old project you worked on. You can, it's a good way to see the different jointing fit together, how you get all those vertebrae together as well. Very cool project. What would you say is the hardest part of a skeleton to assemble, Lee?
Well, we are doing it right this moment. And if you guys want to come see the hardest part, and the most frustrated people, this is where you're going to see it, or be most likely to see it, and it's trying to get the ribs in order. The orcas, being a member of the dolphin family, have two-piece ribs. It's not like us where we have one rib that goes from your backbone to your sternum. This has a rib that stops 2/3 of the way and connects up to another rib. So the first 7 set of ribs are these double ribs, which means to try to get everything in place, to try to get some kind of measurements, to know how big and how wide and how deep and what angle to put this rib cage, you need like 14 people to each hold a bone. And so it's very hard to get started. We're beyond the point now of getting started. I think we've made it over the hump, and it's going to start going together a little bit faster, but we're on the hardest part right now.
So you'll have to come see us in the piazza. Hopefully we won't be beating each other up this weekend.
Looks like you're getting along right now. We'll see in a few hours. So once the skeleton is all assembled, Mo, what can we learn from having all the bones together?
So it's great to bring the orca here so that people can learn more about the different ecotypes and the different individuals, and more information about orcas in general. And we're hoping to hang it after the Built for Speed exhibit ends. So we're going to finish the skeleton next Sunday. Keep your fingers crossed. And then it'll stay in the piazza until September. And then we're hoping to hang it up at the planetarium exit as people walk across the bridge towards the front door. So then everyone will be able to see the orca who comes here to the academy and learn something about the species and their life history and the things they eat and all sorts of cool things.
That's pretty cool. And how has this whole experience compared to the other strandings you've been called on, other bones you worked with?
It was really unique to know who the individual animal was. Usually when we have a dead whale on the beach, we don't have any information about where it was or where it came from. And knowing that he's 0319 and he was in Canada and Alaska, and it really makes it special, and it makes it a great story, and it's really important for people to hear it.
Cool. And what about you, Lee? What is the smallest and largest articulations you've worked on?
Oh, I've smallest would have to be a little brown bat, or I've done some little birds. The largest was a sperm whale in Homer at the high school. It's this collaborative project, and that was 41 feet long. And we collected that, butchered it, cleaned it, and with the high school students put it back together.
Oh, very cool. So how does the orca fit into that spectrum of small to large?
Right in the middle. This one's about 18 feet long. It's kind of the perfect size to do. It's not too big, it's not too small. It's kind of the Goldilocks story.
Very cool. And what I like most about both of you is you're really passionate about these animals, but you kind of come from a little bit untraditional backgrounds that aren't exactly the science career that you take step by step. Can you tell us what your background is in and how your passions kind of drove you to where you are today?
You want me to go first?
All yours.
I actually worked in theater for 10 years, and then I started watching birds and learning more about birds, and I was completely enthralled with birds, and so I went back and got a master's degree in biology and systematic biology, ecology.
Cool. Yeah, what about you, Lee?
Oh, I started out about this size as one of the original nature nerds, right? Collecting everything I could collect from my room. It looked like a disaster of a natural history museum that went off. But then I went to the obvious place, right? I became a bicycle mechanic. I mean, isn't that what
Naturally.
I figured bicycle mechanics can put airplanes together and fly as the Wright brothers did. I mean, why can't they put a whale together? And so that's kind of where it went. So I went from bike mechanics to skeletons, and I do have a day job. This isn't what I do for a living all the time. I have a bookstore in Alaska, so I go back and forth between books and bones.
Yeah.
And some books on bones.
Yeah. So what's next for both of you? What's around the corner?
I'm going to be working on a small mammal project in Nevada, so going from 18 feet orcas to very small mice in the next several months.
I'll probably be going back to Homer for a little while, and come, I guess the end of June, I'm going to the Seattle area to work on a horse skeleton with a school, and I've got a couple other whale projects that are coming up over the fall and winter.
Yeah. Very cool. Do you guys have any questions for Lee or Moe? Orcas, bones? Yeah. What do you do with the flesh? Yeah.
So luckily this was a very remote beach. On a busy beach like Ocean Beach, the Park Service will usually bury things for us, but because it was so remote, we just removed it and left it on the beach, and the turkey vultures and the gulls were so happy. Every day we would go out there, there'd be 20 or 30 turkey vultures working on things.
Free buffet for them, right?
And we cut it all up for them too.
Oh.
Makes it easier.
Very cool. Any other questions?
Earlier, my spot dogs the orca spotted in different.
Right.
Oh, the orca was spotted in another location.
Yes.
Is that the only signature of the orca?
Yeah, so the orca researchers basically just photograph orcas wherever they see them. And so when the offshore, this ecotype tends to spend most of their time way out at sea, and so we don't see them very often. But when they do come into shore, they're generally kind of in that Canada, British Columbia, Washington area. But it's amazing that these researchers, they have a catalog of images of just those dorsal fins and saddle patches, you know, and like this one, you can just look at it and they know right very quickly. It was within hours. He said, oh, that's 0319, and he's been seeing this many times, and he's about 12 years old. So they have an incredible eye for being able to identify individuals, and it helps us to learn a lot more about how orcas live by knowing the individuals and following them for many, many years. So, kind of like a fingerprint, yep. Dorsal fin and saddle patch are like their fingerprint.
Very cool. It's another hand, yeah.
Yeah, so why was this one on the coast if they spend most of their time out on the ocean? They do come into the coast every once in a while, and they travel, generally this group travels in big groups of 50 to 100 individuals. So if the researchers were spending more time way out in the ocean, we would have more sightings, but we just see them when they come in. But they do come in naturally.
Okay, any more? No, well, like we mentioned, they're going to be back at work right now. Going back over there?
Right
Yep.
now.
Right now.
And so that's in the piazza, which is the central kind of glassed-in area.
So you can go around either side of the planetarium, check it out. There's people there, volunteers, and people who work here that can answer more questions if you guys think of some. But
Any what?
Possibly.
Theories of cause of death. So we didn't know for a while, but then when we started working on the ribs with Lee, we noticed that he had a very recent break in one of his ribs. He also had some old fractures in the same rib. So he has one rib that has 2 healed fractures and then a new fracture. And there was an indication that there was blood in his lung cavity. So we think that he suffered some sort of trauma where his rib broke and it could have possibly punctured his lung. But we don't know what that trauma was. Maybe he was hit by something, but we're not sure if it was something like a ship. Probably not. We might have seen more damage with the ship, but it could have been with previous breaks in the same rib. That rib was weak, or maybe there was another orca that tended to pick on him and kept jabbing him in the rib. Who knows?
No. And if I'm correct, is this the rib bone that has...
This is it, yeah. So this is the more recent break. This is one of the healed breaks that had an infection while it was healing. And there's another break under here that you can't really see that was nicely healed. So seems like he might have been beat up by somebody for a while.
Was he a younger orca?
He was young.
We can imagine.
Like a teenager, so we know how that can be.
Any more questions? The bone density of orcas.
No, do you know?
Yeah, it's porous all the way through, but it's lighter. So I don't know if the density would be heavier or lighter because of that.
And he's young, so his bones are all very, very porous.
Well, no, okay. Yeah, well, he's got all that fat around him. And that fat is pretty floaty.
Oh, good question. Any final ones?
I do live in Alaska. Homer.
Homer, Alaska. Yeah, so if you ever need a bone assembly, you can fly him down. The Bone Man. Cool. Well, let's give him a round of applause for coming out. Thank you, Lee and Moe.
Thank you.